Welcome to Rebecca Sounds Reveille. What a privilege today's guest is going to be for not only me, but for you. He is an actor, an impressionist, a voice artist, narrator, director, designer, cartoonist, and he does improv comedy. You probably are familiar with who he is. He is best known for his work on Whose Line Is It Anyway? One of my favorite shows, Impress Me and JIMPRESSIONS. Since 2017, he has captured the audience with his voice as Colonel Sanders in the advertising campaign for KFC. You probably already know who he is. Just wait. And he is also the current voice of Genie from Disney's Aladdin franchise. He has appeared in many films such as Frost Nixon, Apollo 13, The Paper, viral vignettes, and he's created dozens of characters and weapons and vehicles for the original Thundercats, which is an animated series. If you haven't caught it, most of us have, but if you haven't, you're going to be able to find out where and how today. And he is involved with 3 upcoming productions, including Hunters, Gaslit, and the Big Door Prize. We're going to talk about all of those. With me today is an extraordinary man of expertise and flair. Welcome, Jim Meskimen.
Thank you so much. That was a really gracious introduction. I appreciate it. And thank you for your service. And I want to thank all the service people that happen to be tuning in or listening in. And thank you all for your service. We're deeply indebted to you.
Well, and likewise, because the things that you're doing just bring joy to so many people. And I've got to tell you, you're everywhere with smiles. You always have smiles and you're always just imparting on so much. And they say laughter is the best medicine. I've got to ask, did you start this out in doing comedy with little things as a kid? Were you kind of the class clown, the family clown?
Well, I grew up in an acting family, right? My mother is Marion Ross, who was in Happy Days, played Marion Cunningham, and is, been called America's mom. And she was my biological mom, but I share her with everybody. So it was not unusual for us to play characters and do voices and have fun that way. And we did have a happy home life, with the caveat that my parents were divorced when I was about 8. So it was my mom, who everybody knows, is very different from Marion Cunningham because she raised 2 kids by herself, which I think would have been difficult for Marion Cunningham to do. But it was difficult for my mom to do too. But there was a lot of laughter and a lot of invention and creativity, which is what I think the greatest gift that my mom gave me is an appreciation for just being creative as many ways as you can.
I love that. That says a lot about her from what we know. Most of the time, people know celebrities just based on the character role that they had in something that ran for a long period of time or was very, very prolific. And you identify that person with that character role. But I've got to tell you, she has always just presented in such a way where you can engage with her as that America's mom. And I mean, I know the difficulties of being a single mom, but a single mother of 2 doing something in entertainment.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's impossible.
Yes.
It's a home run. It's a grand slam. And I'm a married father of one, and it was a lot of work. So I look at what she accomplished and I'm like, boy, Mom, well done. Well done. She's 93 now. We go and see her all the time. She lives very close by, still living alone. She's still smiling and having a great time. She's retired, but she is just enjoying her estate and her retirement. And she's a treasure. So we just try to take care of her, give back.
I love it. And I love the amount of ingenuity and the creativity that you were imparted with as a child and then have continued to that flair that you have given so many people, including myself. I mean, you obviously have a generation in your family there, 2 of them, that has directly impacted the joy in my life. And I can't thank you enough for that. But I'm wondering, what was your first big sort of breakout in what you have going?
Oh, well, I mean, if you talk about like public notice and so forth, I was on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and that was the first television show that I ever did. And it was a very nice role. It was, in fact, meant to be a pilot to launch a series that I would star in. And so it was a very developed character, much more so than normal, I was to find out later, than normal guest spots, where a guy comes in and does a small part for a show. And sure. I played Will's teacher, and who did impressions, by the way. And it was kind of modeled a little bit after Robin Williams and a Dead Poets Society, somebody who thought outside the box and stood up on the desk and, would do characters and voices and was a little bit unorthodox. So that was a really, I still get recognized from that. And that's in 1994. So that goes back a ways. And luckily I still look enough like that kid that I was to be recognized, usually in airports for some reason. The TSA recognizes me quite a lot. Maybe they're just scrutinizing people more often. Hey, I know that guy. Let's search him.
Yeah, I know him. So with there's a new season out now with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Do you think there's any opportunity of reconnection there?
I'm embarrassed to say that is the first time I have even entertain the idea. You brought it up. It's a great idea. I'm putting my manager on it right now. Get on that right now. It's a good, why didn't I think of that? I'm usually so driven that way. It's another thing I've gotten from my mom is like, she will attack areas of like, wow, this would be a good opportunity, but I hadn't thought about that. What a great idea. Yeah. I'm interested to see the show too. Mm-hmm. Bel-Air. It's called Bel-Air.
Yes. So true. So, and then from there, did you sort of, what was your next, passionate project?
Oh, well, in New York, when I moved to New York when I was in my early 20s, New York City, because even though I decided to be an actor and I thought, well, I obviously you can go to LA, you can go to New York. Now I grew up in LA, but I found LA to be very, hard to break into. We have so many spaces out here. There's just long distances and separations between people. And there's nobody walking on the streets that you want to talk to. So I thought, I knew some people in New York. There are lots of people on the streets, but not so well connected. So I thought, well, I'll go to New York. I know a few people there and let's give that a try. And it seemed like a more social environment. And it was. And so I got involved in improv theater pretty early on. And that was a real passion for me because I discovered that, I worked with a school. We were teaching people improv. We were teaching people all kinds of stuff. We were trying to be creative and influence and inspire people. And that was a great thing to do. Plus, the audiences would be there. They'd be there in person. We would give them flyers on the street or they would find out about us from their friends, and they would be right in front of us. And it would be our job to make them feel terrific. So that's very good activity to do if you're a young artist, I think, is to be confronted by people who are right there, just ordinary people, just a complete random cross-section of people. And it's New York City, so they could be Americans, they could be from any country in the world, and make them feel inspired and engaged and laughing. And that was, I operated off of that for quite a while. It was very thrilling. And we had all kinds of plans. We were going to do improvised TV shows and improvised Broadway musicals and all this stuff that very little of it actually came to fruition. But in the meantime, we were cheering people up, by the dozens. And that was, if you talk to other people that do improv, they probably have the exact same experience. There's something very, very satisfying on a deep level. And it's just a very spiritual level, I think.
That's interesting. I mean, I could feel the exhilaration, just not only in the setting, but what you're delivering and the reaction to it. But on a spiritual level, that's a very different thing.
Yeah. Well, my mode of operation, the way that why I pursue acting and why I pursue art is I'm trying to give to other people, give to you, give to strangers, people I don't know, give to my family, the best experience that I've received from other great artists. You know, if I'm exhilarated by a performance or a character, that's kind of what led me into doing impressions, because I get so excited by these personalities. I'm like, I wonder if I could do that. I wonder if I could be like that guy and produce the effect that he's producing on me, on another person. And that's sort of at the root of it. And I think that's a spiritual thing, because it doesn't have anything obviously to do with my body. Often it doesn't have anything to do with my mind either, but it has to do with just a person to person, individual to individual sort of communication.
I really like that. That's an incredibly different perspective. And I really like that viewpoint. I know that this is something that has been an ongoing thing for you. I love to see the stuff that you have out there. I mean, there's so many places to watch the things that you do. And so transitioning from doing improv into acting scripted things, do you find that a little bit more, I don't know, sort of confining?
A bit. Absolutely. Sometimes quite confining. I mean, you know, television and films, you probably know this, but they have all kinds of different methods of getting created. And some are very open to improvisation. I worked on Parks and Recreation, that show on NBC, for quite a while. And they were pretty open to improv. And there would always be a section of the script that they'd say, all right, we got it covered now as written. Just give us something else, you know, just give us whatever you come up with. And that was like, oh, really? You feel very valued as a performer when they say, like, you're going to let me kind of create it? That's awesome. Yeah. Other shows, like I worked on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which is another wonderful, wonderful show. Another show with a terrific couple of female leads. And Amy Palladino, she wants you to say everything exactly as written. And so next time you watch The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, realize when those people are rattling off all those lines at breakneck speed, they have memorized that to a T. They're not, there's no slopping around. I admire it a lot, but it's a different kind of product. You know, that is very much a dialogue driven, joke driven show. Other shows, not so much. You know, you have a little bit more wiggle room, but an actor should be able, obviously, to be able to duplicate written dialogue and deliver it as it is on the page. But the game is to bring your own sensibility to it, to bring feeling and humanity to it and reality to it, even though somebody wrote it down ahead of time.
And so, okay, so shifting just a little bit and doing a voiceover work as Colonel Sanders or the Genie.
Yeah, Colonel Sanders. I guess I should demonstrate probably that this is a Colonel Sanders voice. And I was just using it this morning to create more commercials for that KFC brand. And it's a real pleasure. I tell you what, I've been doing it for about 6 years, and I hope to do it for another 60.
I love it. I love it. That allows you to, and with the Genie in Aladdin, both of those things, don't they allow some of your creativity to come out through different intonation and inflection in these lines?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. It's a great, it's, you know, when I'm doing an impression, like when I'm doing Robin Williams, the Genie, the original, this is the one that we all loved. That one, I like to, invest what I feel is a kind of Robin energy into it, which is obviously very strong, passionate, and at the same time reserved, playful, changeable, malleable, whatever you want to say. So that's my choice, but I'm trying to emulate, something that I observed in that original performer. And Colonel Sanders, I actually do quite a lot of other ancillary material for Colonel Sanders that I totally make up myself. And that's on my YouTube channel. I like to do these imagined conversations between Colonel Sanders, who's just such a funny character to me. I mean, he's a real man, and I honor him a lot, and I respect him a lot. But he's so not part of this time. If he was around this day and age, I think he would just stand around stunned. But I like to recreate these conversations between Colonel Sanders and other celebrities, like Marlon Brando or Johnny Carson or Nixon, or I just did George Lucas. I can imagine conversation between Colonel Sanders and George Lucas, where George Lucas is trying to raise some money for a little movie he's doing called Star Wars. And Colonel Sanders is being asked to see if he might want to invest some money in it. And now you say this here movie of yours takes place in the distant past.
That's right. Breaking with tradition just a little bit and putting it in the distant past in another galaxy far, far away.
Oh, it's an interesting idea.
So I like to kind of like imagine these things in my head, and then I record them and I put them up on YouTube, and it makes me laugh.
I love this. This is an incredible, invaluable talent that you have. I just can't, I don't know how you are able to perfect it just so astutely.
Well, thanks. I mean, it's a lot of practice. I mean, it'd be like I think of it like a musician. I'm not a musician, but I like to sing, but I don't play any instruments. But I've noticed a lot of my friends who do, they have spent innumerable hours with a guitar in their hands, just noodling around, trying out chords, trying to copy different songs, so that, if they just walk into Guitar Center and pick up a guitar, they can do something amazing. You're like, oh my God, that's kind of what I flatter myself that's kind of what I'm doing with my voice.
I kind of like that. If you can flatter yourself, that it's going to be conveyed pretty well to everyone else.
Yeah. If you can flatter yourself, somebody else might catch on and try to flatter you right back.
Now, let's go with that for a second, because flattery sometimes sometimes it's really a way to gain votes. And I know that you do really great presidential impressions as well.
That's right. I've done that. Used to was the commander in chief of the United States of America, George W. Bush. Now he's the head painter, as far as I know. Them portraits of the former servicemen and so forth.
I love this. I absolutely love this. I mean, I'm just sitting here listening to the different voices that you do and hanging on every word, because of how I would not be able to decipher whether it was the real, Slim Shady, please stand up kind of there. I mean, this is fabulous. This is so exciting. So with all of these things that you've had ongoing over a long period of time, you're now working and have some things in production that I really think we should talk about, one in particular. And so let's kind of venture that way.
Yeah, there's a show called Gaslit, and Gaslit is about the Watergate era, and it stars Julia Roberts and Sean Penn. And it's about Martha Mitchell and John Mitchell, basically during the Watergate period. He was the attorney general and she was his wife, and knew a lot, or was very vociferous, let's say, very talkative about things that were going on that probably the men involved didn't necessarily, appreciate having exposed to the public on broad media lines at the time. I've not seen the show. I've read a couple of the scripts that I was involved in. I play a Senator Gurney, but it's, these days people that are creating for television are enjoying a kind of a renaissance. This is sort of a golden age of television. And because there's so many platforms and so many opportunities and so many companies trying to put up content and tell stories, that we're looking back at periods of time like the Watergate era, the 70s. And I think it's fun to watch, particularly, I mean, I'm in my 60s now. So anything that captures that period, I was 13 years old when all that stuff was going on. I remember the names, I heard the names on television, but not really very clear on exactly what that was about. And I don't know if this show will make it any clearer, but at least it's a world that I want to see again. I want to catch it again and have an opportunity to learn from. And so, so this will be I think, a very engaging and fun and dramatic and funny series. I think there's moments of great humor in it. Sean Penn was wild to work with. He's under so much prosthetic makeup, beautifully designed by Kazuhiro, the same Japanese designer that designed the makeup for Gary Oldman in Darkest Hour.
Yes.
And I met him years ago when he was just starting his American career, when I worked on The Grinch. And he was working for Rick Baker in his studio. And I believe he applied the makeup every day on Jim Carrey. Not 100% sure that, but he was definitely in the studio. So anyway, he did Sean Penn's makeup. And when I first met Sean Penn, I was a little nervous. You're always nervous meeting a big Oscar-winning movie actor or actress. And I've met many of them. but this fat guy that kind of looked like William Frawley from I Love Lucy stood up and said, "Hi, I'm Sean." And I said, "If you say so." I said, there was no evidence of it at all. His tiny his eyes, maybe it's like, okay, I guess you're right.
Yeah. Eyes are kind of one of those things where they say the window to the soul. So no matter how much you change everything else, those two things sort of stick right in.
That's true. But if there's contradictory information going around all around the eyes, I mean, he's bald. He's got probably fake ears on. He's got a big neck and a big hump on his back and a big belly. And it's like, wow, it looks very natural. And it's just so artistically done. It's gorgeous. Anyway, he's obviously a magnificent actor. I work with Julia Roberts as well, and she looks lovely and didn't opt to put on a lot of makeup, prosthetic makeup. So,
okay.
I think she still wanted to be Martha Mitchell, but also, still look beautiful like Julia Roberts. I understand.
Well, I really think that this is neat because you mentioned something that I hear so often. You mentioned something as an answer to something that I hear so often, and that is, why is it that Hollywood is they go back in time to these shows? And I mean, we've got all this stuff going on right now. Can't people create new content and things like that? But you've really hit home on something. And then, yeah.
What is that? What is that for you?
It's the same thing, because I know when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and in my teenage years, I was focused on all of the fun things that were going on around me. I was not paying attention to what's going on in this particular area of life, politically or whatever. I mean, you would hear about it and you catch the headlines, but it wasn't, unless you were really involved with history. And I wasn't. I was, hanging out all over Los Angeles and meeting people and having a good old time. So culturally, I was great at all the social stuff. But historically, no. And I wasn't paying attention to the deep parts of things that impact our lives now and why it's so important for us to do that now.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think I was more interested in that world, the political world. I hate politics. I'm not interested at all in it as an adult. But at the time, the magazine that I liked the best, which was Mad Magazine, had a lot about Watergate and a lot about Nixon and the faces of these guys, and Spiro Agnew. I still remember how Spiro Agnew spoke with that strange kind of upper crust gangster thing he had. And the faces, they would draw these faces, and I would try to, I was drawing all the time as a cartoonist, just trying, it's so inspired by those crazy faces and all, people in the political realm, say what you will about them, but they have some interesting faces. And they've come by them the hard way, I think, in a lot of ways. And they're a lot of fun to draw, especially if you're a cartoonist. So I think that's what sucked me into the whole, well, who is Nixon and Ehrlichman and Haldeman and how does he look? And otherwise, I mean, if it only came from Walter Cronkite, I don't think I would have been that engaged.
Understandably so. I think you're right. Some of those prominent features make it great for cartoons. And I mean, any illustrations, when people can do that, it just blows my mind. I know someone who used to do that in one of the positions that I was in the law enforcement area. And I would just think how talented it is that this person can do that and then create something and just capture the humor in it, and so spot on, which brings, it begs the question about Thundercats and how you got involved in that.
Yeah, so I was in my 20s. I was a freelance artist. I knew I wanted to be an actor, but to be an actor takes an investment of time and shoe leather and, intention. And I lived in New York City, which was, I thought it was expensive then. Now I don't know how anybody lives there. But so I was taking my portfolio around, schlepping it around and trying to get jobs. I happened to get a meeting with Jules Bass of Rankin Bass, and they were looking for a storyboard artist for this new show they were doing called Thundercats. This is like 1984, 85. And I had worked for a very short time as an assistant to a storyboard guy at Hanna-Barbera Studios. And again, I have to thank my mom, Marion Ross, again, for pushing me. She had ambition to spare, so she would give me some. She would push me along. And she got me involved at Hanna-Barbera through somebody she knew. And I got a little bit of training there. And I did work for them for a short period of time. Enough so that when I went to New York and Jules Bass said, he showed me some storyboards that they had done. And he said, well, what do you think of these? What's your appraisal of these? And I went, yeah, they're all right. I sort of was disparaging. And he went, all right, well, we'll hire you then. And then I was really in trouble because I didn't really know about storyboarding at all. But the lucky thing was that eventually, within about a week, I think he recognized the folly of hiring me to do storyboards and put me on to character design, which is where I really could do. I could do that. I could do characters and weapons and animals and weird things. And so I worked for them for about a year and designed just dozens and dozens of, if not hundreds of characters for the Thundercats show. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, I was doing improv and trying to get into commercials and television shows. So they were very nice. They had an office on Fifth Avenue, or just off of Fifth Avenue and 53rd Street, above the Museum of Broadcasting. And I would take long lunches and sometimes go to an audition. And they were like, Yeah, he's an artist himself, Jules Bass. And so he was kind of like, I get it. They knew I was that kind of guy. Very fortunate. And then within a couple of years, I could actually get out of freelance artwork completely and just shift full time into radio and TV voiceovers and commercials and stuff like that.
I love that you're doing those now. I can tell you, I've known people who said, who's doing Colonel Sanders now? Mm-hmm. I mean, especially when you go back to our childhood and the things that we've seen over the years. Yeah. And so I think that this is going to be such an opportunity for those members of the audience to connect with you. And they're already going to know who you are with the amount of work that you've done. But let me ask you too, are you, in addition to the things that you're involved with, both as an actor, as voiceover artist, are you also doing stand-up right now?
No, in fact, I'm not really a stand-up comic. I have been called upon to do something like that from time to time. I MC events, and I have a one-person show, a one-man show called JIMPRESSIONS, which, and that contains, that's sort of like stand-up, but I don't do comedy clubs. I don't like comedy clubs. I don't like performing in bars. Mm-hmm. I just never, I have a lot of respect for the art form, and people that are stand-up comics, my hat is off to them because it's really rough, but it is a very specific sort of trade. I don't pursue that trade. I pursue more a theatrical approach, and so I put together a show of impressions, and I'm always changing it out and coming up with new ideas and try to bring music into it and other special effects. And I present that from time to time, usually at my wife's theater. She has a theater school and a beautiful theater here in Sherman Oaks, California. But I've done it all over the world. Actually, I've done it in Australia and in England and Canada, and popped around in the East Coast. And so I'm hoping to get it started. In fact, I just got an offer today, so I will be doing it again, popping around. And obviously the COVID thing has really put the kibosh on getting an audience together for a while there. But I think now people are ready to go out and enjoy some JIMPRESSIONS again.
We would love to stay abreast of all of the things that you've got going on, whether it's online, whether it's somewhere where we can go see you, mm-hmm. following the things the productions that you have currently underway, and all of the things that I know you're not going to stop. So the things that you're going to have coming down the pipeline here pretty soon. Let me ask you, what would be, for those that are watching and for those that are listening, be the best way to connect with you and to stay on top of everything that you've got going on and just really connect?
Well, I have a website, jimmeskilmen.com. I can't say that I update it very much though, but I'm on YouTube all the time, and Instagram, and also TikTok now. And my YouTube channel, I feed regularly. It's like an insatiable beast. So I'm putting up videos at least once a day, sometimes twice or 3 times a day. And I talk about all kinds of things on that YouTube channel. I do fun things like a celebrity fortune cookie, where I open a fortune cookie every day in a celebrity voice, spin the wheel. And I do the Colonel Sanders material. I do that on the YouTube channel as well. And then I do actor tips. My experiences as a working actor. I share if something happens that's unusual, I thought another aspiring actor or artist would like to know about or should know about, I will share that. I also have videos of my mom, some fun things we've gotten her to do with my daughter, with my wife. We have a lot of content and a lot of stuff that we like to share with people. So YouTube, just look up my name, Meskimen. Or JIMPRESSIONS is probably the easiest thing, and you can subscribe and there's a lot of content there, more than any human being could absorb. But you can sort of take your pick on what you want to check out.
There is. I was captivated by it, so I'm going to tell you it is, and you are very talented. I want to thank you so much for taking your time with us today, so that we could get to know you a little bit, connect with you, watch what you've got going on, and embrace the opportunity to grab some more smiles and joy, because you're delivering it.
No, I appreciate it. Those are good words. Good words. I want to thank you again too for your service, both as a service person, but also as a police officer. I mean, it's a big contribution, and thank you for that as well.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of you for tuning into another episode of Rebecca Sounds Reveille. Please do connect with Jim. You've got to see the work that he's got going on. And if you're on TikTok, you can watch him all day long there, but then you got to head on over to YouTube, because there's so much more. And I'm going to tell you, you'll have time. There's tons of streaming out there, and but if you say, hey, I've got some gaps of time, this is where you need to fill it, because I'm going to tell you what, it's going to pick you up. It sure did me. I thank you all for tuning in, like I said, to another episode. And I ask that you get this information out there to your friends, your family, your loved one, everybody you know on social media, and everybody that you don't.